So because of this one thing that a lot of artists do not do, they end up in a career that was not of their choice. They do not make as much art and they're not able to improve on their art. And in general, they fail in so many other areas. And that is the failure to learn to detach. As an artist, assuming you're very passionate about your work, you pour a lot of yourself into your art, and that could include your emotions, your perspective on life, your background or experience, and so much more. Being an artist requires a lot of emotional energy being put into your work, and a lot of the times when your art does not turn out the way that you want it to, or you receive feedback or criticism that makes you feel really bad about yourself, you end up doing something like this to your art. And that is why today I wanted to talk about the beauty of detachment as an artist, because when I was an art student getting through Cal Arts, this was the one thing I was struggling to do throughout my first 2 years, because I do feel like there will be seasons in your life where you will care about your art, and then there are going to be seasons where you don't care. But in general, I do think it's healthy to have a balance of knowing when to not care, when to move on, and when is a good time to stop overly attaching yourself to it. So some of the things that really hold us back from being the best artist that we can possibly be are things like perfectionism. And this is nothing new to a lot of people. And perfectionism is basically going to hold you back from creating more art, improving on your art, because you're not making as much art. You might not finish projects as frequently, and you probably don't get to see as many versions that you could have possibly made from one idea. Then there's things like your self-image, which will really affect your mental health, because when your art turns out a way that does not look good or the way that you prefer it to, you feel really bad about yourself, and you might even worry about what other people out there think about your art. And even if your art is not bad, maybe the style of it is something that you feel like your community does not really like, or they might be judging you and you feel very shameful about it. I even remember there was a time in life, my biggest fear in life was just having people just stand behind me and just peeking over my shoulder and looking at what I drew. I didn't even know how I would be able to function in a workplace, considering that I'd be sitting in an open environment where people can just be passing by me and judging what I drew. And there's other aspects to your self-image, such as a limiting identity of yourself as an artist. You might be like, oh, I'm an artist. I don't do this. I don't study business. I don't go work out. I don't go live my life and travel the world. Of course, this is only to a certain group of people, because I feel like I know a lot of artists that like doing these things, but there are still a handful of artists out there that only really kind of limit themselves to what they think their role is in life. And there's also things like developing your business skills, which I feel like a lot of artists are actually getting better at lately. I do feel like in the past, artists tend to push away the idea of getting into business because it's just things that they don't really find interesting, because it's a totally different side of your brain, which is understandable. But I feel like in this day and age, to succeed as an artist, you do need to have a healthy understanding of business just to be able to help you get through life as an artist. But you don't really need to suddenly transform yourself into like a business major or anything. It's just needing to know enough that will help you with what you want to do with your art career. And regarding business, I do feel like a lot of artists find it shameful to self-promote their work or art business just because of these identities that they tie to themselves, such as like, oh, artists don't do business, we're not businessmen. This kind of goes back to the idea of the self-image. And then deciding on ideas may be another struggle of an artist that does not really know how to detach themselves, because you end up either resorting to the first idea you had, you're not really open to the idea of sacrificing ideas and just going with the first one, which might not have been the best one. You would have never known if some of the other iterations would have been a better idea. And then there are even times where artists are very quick to submit their most precious, vulnerable, most valued story and sell it to publishers or studios to get it turned into a book or a TV show. And you kind of go into this naively, only for that idea to either get canceled by the studio or the publisher, or it can get easily distorted into this whole new idea by executives, or they might just withhold the copyright from you and you can never regain access to owning the copyright of your most precious story ever again. These are just some of the stories I've heard from people that I've worked with. So as much as art is a very personal personal and vulnerable thing that we do as artists, it's not always the greatest idea to wear your heart on your sleeve with just any studio or any publisher that you go to. And then lastly, failure to detach also just decreases your likeliness to fully succeed as an artist in any career, because there will be lows no matter what in life. There are going to be times where your art is not succeeding, your career is not going the way that you want to, and you might have longer hiatuses in between gigs, and that's just life. But I feel like the thing that artists need to remember is that this is not really a representation of who you are as an artist, and these are things that will ultimately pass, but your ability to get through them will have to rely on detaching yourself from your career, your art, just to some degree, just so that those moments of lows are less impactful. And here are just some of the actionable things that you could do as an artist to learn to detach yourself from your work, because while your art, again, is your baby, it's your brainchild, it is not you, and I feel like it is healthier to have that boundary set between you and your work. And the first thing I will have to say is developing business skills or business sensibilities, because being an artist can be a very turbulent career choice at times, depending on what you choose. For example, in animation, it's a pretty nomadic career path where you are hopping from project to project, but in between those projects, you'll have moments of hiatuses. And while the times that you are employed at a studio is pretty stable, you never really know what's going to be happening during these time periods where you don't have work from your full-time job. And that's why it's really important to either have your own personal business, have your own personal side project, or just a secondary form of an income. And this could be something that you could be working on for yourself. You can choose a personal project that you will just develop over time and use these moments of hiatuses to really dig deeper into them. And with creating personal projects that you will hopefully eventually monetize, you're gonna have to learn how to promote your work and feel comfortable with the idea of selling them or selling ideas to people. And that's why I'd like to thank the sponsor of today's video, Tenada. So Tenada is a 3D animated text art app in which you can create graphics consisting of 3D text that you could use as animations or graphics, and you could be using these things to help promote your art or your work, so you don't always have to constantly be creating the assets to promote your own work. So on this app, there are over 300 different types of text animation that is very easy to use. And if you're thinking about things like making a video intro or adding layers of text over a reel or a short or TikTok, this could be very helpful. There's also over 100 different fonts and text styles that you can put effects on, like shadows, textures, stencils, and you can overlay these on videos or reels that you make. If, for example, the app that you're currently using doesn't really have the best looking text or font to use as captions. And if you do want to try out Tenada, the app is free to download, but if you want to remove the watermark or use all the other features, there is a paid pro version available. So you can subscribe for 7 days for a free trial, and then afterwards it can either be $4.99 per month or just $29.99 for the whole year. So even if you just get the free version, there's still a variety of templates, text, fonts, effects, and designs to use. But if you get the pro version, you can have access to all of them. So for me, I'm really trying to step up my Reels games, and I'm gonna eventually maybe try to do like a day in the life artist series on my Instagram, Shorts, and TikTok. So I'm just gonna experiment with some text options for either captions or like a little intro for a video. And of course, there are some of these graphics which, depending on the vibe of your content, they can be very intense or extreme. Some can be just very subtle, soft, and cute. And they're just even really simple ones if that's all you need, but you still want the option to have some more extreme or complex designs. So I'm just gonna make 3 different types of versions just so you can see what it would be like if, you know, maybe I'm not Mew Tripled and I'm some other creator with a more intense type of aesthetic. But since I am more of just like an artist and I like to keep things simple and clear, I'm gonna go with this one. So this is the more lively and punchy version, which is cool, but not totally my vibe. Then the second one is a little bit more natural, and it kind of gives me some like farmhouse but handwriting vibes, but I also feel like that's not really me, so I ended up settling with the clearest, most simple option so that the focus is still on the video. And you can easily customize effects like wiggles and bounces in their editor with a simple click of a few buttons to suit your video's needs, and this is just how mine turned out, and I think it's pretty cute. So I'm happy to share that Tenada has prepared 40 free Pro version codes in which there are going to be limited spots. There are only 20 available for Apple users and there are only 20 available for Android users, so you gotta hop on it if you want to try Tenada for free. So check out the information box to get more information onto how to access that, and thank you again to Tenada for sponsoring today's video. Other things you can do as an artist to detach is to just be okay with drawing ugly things. Keep a sketchbook where you only do sketches that look bad, or you're not afraid to make mistakes and you have no pressure in sharing this book with anyone else. But hey, maybe when you finish the book it might turn out not as bad as you originally thought and you would be happy to share it with someone. And that's how I felt when I used to create these shit books that I just call my sketchbooks that I draw bad art in. I initially just created these things as a place where I would just be free to make mistakes, draw ugly and bad things and not care, but I ended up really appreciating how much this has helped me on my personal art journey that I even share them on my YouTube. So check out these videos if you want to see my really old shit books or sketchbooks. These should be places where you feel free to explore ideas, draw thumbnails, and plan out things without worrying about how bad it's going to make your sketchbook look. And if your sketchbook is a thing that's holding you back from creating all of these rough sketches or unfinished thumbnails, maybe think about getting a sketchbook that is a little bit less sophisticated, like a regular schmegular marble notebook. Another thing that I often did with my friends, and I feel like I need to start doing this again really soon, is to get used to people criticizing and giving you feedback for your artwork. Remember, there's constructive criticism and there's people just giving you critiques without asking for it. This is of course coming from a place where you are going to trust somebody with giving you feedback, and you can go to a friend or somebody like your teacher that might understand what your art goals are a little bit more, and you can show them your work and ask them just to critique it, because in order to grow you need to know what other people view your artwork as, and as an artist it is a little bit of a compromise between you and the viewer, because you want to create art that makes you happy, but you also want to be able to satisfy someone who is your potential audience or customer. And I think one of the things that makes receiving feedback a more comfortable of an experience is if you're the one initiating it to the other person, and if the other person even asks you for feedback back on their work, it creates a more happy mutual experience where you're both learning and growing from each other. And I ultimately think that in order to be a good artist, you have to be a brave artist. Don't be afraid of what people think or say about your work. Your art is a thing that is changing over time like you are. It's not like the way you draw right now is the way that you're gonna draw forever. That is why you're going to people for feedback. And I feel like, you know, we reach a point as an adult where you're like, my art is good enough. I should not receive criticism anymore because I'm a professional. But no, you still need feedback. Like for me, I always just reach out to my editor for my book and I'm just like, what do you think is not working in the story? What do you think is? Even at storyboard meetings in my animation world, I still receive feedback from my directors, and even when I was an assistant director, I still received feedback from my showrunner. So it's like a cycle that's never gonna end, so you might as well get used to it. Then next, I talk about this in all of my videos because I'm a very big advocate for going out to live your life, because you can't create your best art if you don't live your best life. So go out and have other life experiences outside of art. Like, art was your hobby, but if you're watching this video, you're probably considering it as a career maybe. And if so, I think you need to learn to find other hobbies outside of art, because there's gonna be a point in time where art will just not make you happy anymore. And you know, it could be a temporary thing, it could be a permanent thing, depending on your perspective. But that's why seeking hobbies, interests outside of art can help you better that relationship with art once it's no longer just your hobby. Go out and go hiking with some friends, go maybe discover a sport that you like, travel the world, try to cook, bake something. Maybe you enjoy writing on the side, or maybe there's a small business idea that is still artistic and creative, but it's not the same type of skill like drawing or illustration. I found that once I started working in the art/animation industry, when I'm hanging out with other other art friends of mine, the last thing that we ever want to talk about is art or animation. Like, we just want to talk about either travel plans or other hobbies, games that people play, movies that people watch, music that people listen to. So if you seeking hobbies outside of art is not enough of an incentive for yourself, just know that once you start building a community, your friends around you will probably not want to be talking about art or thinking about it as much. And then lastly, I think it's important to determine a life goal about where you want to be in at least like 5 years from now, and how your current relationship with art is going to help you get there or not. So this really applies to people who are thinking about art as a career seriously, because if you're somebody that does want to live like this extravagant or grand life where you're traveling all the time, you want to live in a big house in a high cost of living state, you might have to consider what you're doing with your art career. Like, maybe working just a studio job might not be enough. Maybe just running a small business might not be enough. You might realize you need multiple sources of income, and you might have to dig into other art opportunities that will help you get there. Of course, this is going to be different for everyone, but I feel like if you're at a stage where you really feel like your art needs to get you to a specific place in life, you have to stop thinking about it as your soul, your heart, your identity. Maybe it can be for like 40 to 50% of the time, but the remaining percentage of the time, you have to remember that your art is also a tool that you can use to help you get to where you want to be in your life. And then maybe if your life goals are something like just focusing on your mental health, you want to live a more simple, quiet life, you don't need any of these bells or whistles, and that's gonna be fine. Maybe you're not even living in a high cost of living area and you're perfectly fine living where you are, and the expenses of living there are not as great as places like Los Angeles, New York, or San Francisco. So for you, maybe just living off of one art career or one art job might be more realistic. Although I will say that I do feel like it's still good to have pillows or cushions or things to fall back onto, because you just never know what might happen in life. Just because you're living in a small cost of living area, you might, have health problems that unexpectedly arise. A disaster could happen. You just don't know. So that's why I just believe in the cushion. But I feel like, again, if your daily costs are not as high, you don't really have to think about hustling and so many other side hustles as much. And of course, when you're thinking about your life goals, you want to update this as time goes on, because I think we have to remember that as people and artists, we are changing over time. Things in life change over time. The state of different industries change over time. So I don't think there's any shame in editing this as you go on with life, so that you don't just say like, I said I was gonna do this and I was gonna be a director for a movie in 5 years from now, and I'm gonna cling on to that no matter what. I think you should honor the fact that you're going to be changing, and respecting that will definitely give you a better peace of mind than upholding this goal that you thought you wanted, but then maybe you realize it might not be as realistic for the type of life you want. And if you want to get more information on a topic like this, please check out my video, The Biggest Art Mistake You Can Make. And I think that even if you're gonna detach yourself from your art, there is still a section of art that you can keep to yourself, where you're like, this is where you pour your heart and soul into, but you separate that from the type of art that you're detaching from, so that that art can work and get you to where you want in life. So yeah, that's what I personally do. A lot of the art that I share on my Instagram, YouTube, or in my animation career is the type of art that I make where I'm just happy to draw and make money off of it so that I can live my life. But I also have the art that I keep close to myself, that I don't share online, and I don't monetize it whatsoever, and that's just what it stays as, and that's how I kind of balance my life as an artist, and I hope that you're able to find what works for you. Anyway, thank you for watching this video. If you would like to support me as an artist, please consider checking out my Patreon, where I share the behind the scenes and early access of videos like these, as well as comics on my Instagram. I also do podcasts and live streams, and also do email consultations if there's something about your art career or art skills that you're struggling with and you would like a second eye on it. I pretty much give monthly emails out personalized to you, so check that out if you are interested. Anyway, thank you so much. I appreciate your support, and I will see you all in the next one.